All right, buckle up, because today's deep dive takes us to a place where geography gets a little, um, creative.
Interesting.
We're talking flat Earth maps.
Ah, yes, those maps.
You should see the stack our listener sent in.
Oh, wow.
Some are actually from the Flat Earth Society's website,
Really?
which, for the record, totally exists.
It does.
Just throwing that out there.
You're right.
Before you think we've gone totally off the rails here, we're not advocating for a flat Earth.
Of course not.
It's more about tracing how this idea has endured visually across centuries.
Okay, I see.
And some of these maps are shockingly modern. But we'll get to those later.
Looking forward to it.
Let's start old school with this TO map.
The TO map.
It looks like something out of a medieval manuscript.
It really does.
It's incredibly simplified. Just a circle with a T inside, and bam, you've got Asia, Europe, and Africa.
Simple yet effective for its time.
Exactly. So less about accurate coastlines and more about something else entirely right.
Precisely.
What would you say that something else is?
Well, think of them as visual representations of the world as they understood it at the time, infused with religious and symbolic meaning.
So more about reflecting beliefs than actual geography.
You could say that, yes.
A window into their worldview. I've kind of seen that with this next one, too.
Which one is that?
Cosmas Indicopleustes, a 6th century monk, actually created a map to argue for a biblical flat Earth.
I've heard of him.
It's in his book.
Fascinating.
It's a map, but it's also like a theological argument.
It goes to show how deeply ingrained this belief was for some.
Yeah, and his map isn't subtle about it either. It's Earth as a rectangle, with walls and a dome-shaped sky, echoing descriptions from religious texts.
A literal interpretation.
Exactly. So for Cosmas, it wasn't just a map. It was a statement of faith made visual.
Precisely. It demonstrates how intertwined map-making and belief systems were.
Maps weren't just about getting from point A to point B back then.
Not at all. They were reflections of deeply held convictions about the universe's structure.
Which makes you wonder, as scientific knowledge started changing things, how did flat Earth proponents adapt?
That's a great question, and it leads us to some interesting developments in the 19th century. They didn't just toss out their old maps when science came knocking.
So what does they do?
Some clung to traditional interpretations, but others tried to reconcile their beliefs with these new scientific discoveries.
Find a way to make it all fit.
Exactly. And that's where we start to see more scientific diagrams emerging in the 19th century.
Like trying to prove a point with a map instead of just illustrating a belief?
Precisely. A key figure in this shift is Samuel Rowbotham.
Rowbotham, the author of Earth Not a Globe.
The one and only.
Got to give him points for a bold title.
Quite a statement.
And he even made a map to go with his book, right?
He did. It wasn't just a visual aid, though.
What was it then?
It was a calculated effort to provide a framework, albeit flawed, for a flat Earth model.
Okay, so how did he try to make it all fit together? Because we're talking about the 19th century here. People are starting to understand gravity and other scientific concepts.
It took some creativity. Let's just say his model required a bit of imagination.
I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
Imagine a disc-shaped Earth with the North Pole at its center.
The classic flat Earth image.
Exactly. But instead of planets orbiting the sun, picture the sun, moon, and stars as significantly smaller objects circling above this disk.
So like a cosmic mobile over a giant pancake.
You could say that. And of course, he had to explain day and night cycles and, well, gravity.
Which seems like a pretty big hurdle to overcome with a flat Earth model.
You're telling me he proposed this intricate dance of celestial bodies with the sun moving in specific patterns to create those effects.
Hold on. So instead of gravity holding everything together, it's all just choreography.
In essence, yes.
That's one way to explain it, I guess.
His theories have been thoroughly debunked, of course.
Right. We're more interested in the creativity of it all.
Exactly. It highlights the lengths people would go to in order to rationalize their beliefs, even when confronted with evidence contradicting those beliefs.
And speaking of holding on to beliefs, I think this next map might take the cake for that. This is where we're getting really modern.
Orlando Ferguson, 1983.
1983. Seriously? Are you sure that's right?
Positive. It's one of the more recent maps in the collection.
Wow. Okay, so what does a late 20th century flat Earth map even look like? Does it have laser beams instead of trade routes or something?
Not quite, but it's definitely unique. Ferguson's map is intriguing because it tries to reconcile the flat Earth model with curvature.
Wait, hold on. How do you have both a flat Earth and curvature? That's like saying a square is round.
It seems paradoxical, right? But his map depicts a square-shaped Earth with the edges curving upwards.
Okay, I'm picturing it. So he's saying the Earth is like a bowl.
Kind of. His argument was that this upward curvature created the illusion of a spherical Earth.
So if you walk to the edge of this square Earth, you just start walking uphill.
That's the general idea, though I wouldn't recommend trying it.
I'll take your word for it.
Now, it's important to remember that even within the flat Earth community, there isn't always agreement on the specifics of the model.
Different strokes for different folks, even when those folks believe the Earth is a pancake.
Exactly. But Ferguson's map is a great example of how these concepts can persist and even evolve through time.
It really makes you wonder, at what point does a map become more about making a statement than actually mapping anything accurately?
That's a great point, and it leads us perfectly into the 20th century and beyond.
Here, we see flat Earth maps shift from scientific diagrams to something else.
Indeed.
It's less about geography and more about something else,
You could say that.
like propaganda or tools to build a community.
Both, actually.
So it's more about belonging than exploration at this point,
Exactly.
like a visual membership card.
You could put it that way.
Okay, so less about maps and more about movements.
Precisely. Take Voliva's World Map, for instance.
Voliva.
Wilbur Glenn. Voliva, leader of a religious sect in Zion, Illinois.
Never heard of it.
It was a town founded on the belief in a flat Earth.
Wow, a whole town.
And Voliva's map wasn't just for show. They actually taught it in their schools.
You're kidding. Wow, talk about an immersive educational experience.
It really highlights how these ideas can have real-world impact.
Yeah, it's not just a fringe theory when it's being taught in schools.
Exactly.
So we've gone from medieval manuscripts to 20th century classrooms.
And the journey's not over yet.
What else is there?
Well, we have the modern Flat Earth Society.
They're still around.
Oh, yeah. More active than ever.
Huh. So what do their maps look like these days?
Their modern map is very different from the ones we've seen so far.
How so?
It's clean, stylized, very modern looking.
Like a rebrand of an old idea.
Exactly. They've updated their look for a new audience.
Fascinating.
But perhaps the most striking map in the collection is Shenton's map with Apollo flight path.
The one that tries to explain the moon landing on a flat Earth?
That's the one.
I'm going to need some help with this one.
Well, Shenton's map claims to prove that the Apollo missions were staged.
Staged. On a flat Earth. I'm even more confused now.
Okay, so picture this. Instead of landing on the moon, Shenton believed the astronauts flew in a specific pattern above a flat Earth.
So all those images we've seen, the lunar rover, the flag on the moon, it was all fake.
According to Shenton, yes.
And his map shows how they pulled it off.
That's the idea. Whether or not it's convincing is another matter entirely.
I'm guessing not very.
You're probably right.
Okay, so we've gone from maps as religious artifacts to maps as scientific models to maps as tools for conspiracy theories.
It's quite a journey.
It really is.
Yeah.
And through it all, we see this constant desire to make sense of the world, even if it means bending the rules of reality a bit.
Or a lot.
True. But that's the power of belief, I guess.
It's a powerful force. And these maps show us that our beliefs can shape how we see the world just as much as any scientific instrument or technological advancement.
So the next time I look at a map, I'll be sure to remember that it's not just showing me places,
It's showing you perspectives.
and maybe even a few hidden agendas.
You got it.
Well, on that note, I think we've officially circumnavigated the globe of flat Earth maps for one day.
I believe we have.
Big thanks to our listeners for sending in these fascinating maps and for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cartographic curiosity.
It's been a pleasure exploring with you.
Until next time, happy mapping, everyone.